It's always the
Evening, folks. Welcome to the countdown to kickoff for Leeds versus Sheffield Wednesday. Another away game and hopefully Leeds' first 3 points of the season. I am joined by a friend tonight to shake things up and do it a bit differently. Former goalkeeper friend, should also be said as well. Brian Taffe. Brian, how you doing, mate?
all good. Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure.
Good. Yeah, nice to have a chat to a couple of people. We've got loads of comments coming in.
Too many of the same faces on here all the time, so you definitely have
Gotta
to
keep it
mix
fresh, man. Gotta keep it fresh. keep it interesting with people. We hit a huge milestone today, so it's out on the socials. But just to say, a huge thank you to everyone. We hit 50,000 subscribers today, which is just mind blowing. So again, I said already, but massive thanks to everyone that has commented or said anything or even watched, supported, liked, disliked, agreed, disagreed with me. It doesn't really matter. So I really appreciate everyone's support. So thank you for that. We'll go through a couple of comments. Wayne's in the house. Solomon, yeah, exactly, mate. We just keep the politics out of football and keep it about the footballers, and we should all be fine. Gary tuning in from New Brunswick. Thanks very much, Gary. Good to see you. Chris is in the house. Bench is a bit weaker. Yeah. Well, Vober's injured. So we'll have to see how that one pans out. Zach is in here. Chris again. Padre. How are you doing? Scooby too. Loads of people here. Massive hello to everyone. I'm going to just fly through the initial comments because you're all in the house. You know what you're saying. And now the conversations will start amongst yourselves, and they already have. There we go. Massive. 2 keepers on the bench, Brian. We've got to get away from this at some point, don't we?
Well, definitely. I mean, they need signings, don't they? Like, I mean, you can't let as many go. That even if they're on the fringes, I mean, it still needs backup in every area, and it needs to happen. And look, I mean, you can go around the houses and talk about whether, they constantly said they were going to get their business done early and they haven't, but they need to sort it out now. They need to get centre half really, or well, if they think De Bayo is good enough, at least another midfielder, winger, another winger if Nando goes, and probably a full back as well. But the other one is obviously no Bamford again.
Yeah.
On the bench.
What's that about? I wonder.
I'm sure it'll come out later on today, but yeah, I mean, there was no talk of him being anyway injured. The only one that Farker said in his press conference was that Bober had a calf issue, but other than that, so I mean, maybe he's gone to Saudi Arabia for a big money move.
That doesn't look like it. Vober might be, but according just seeing it there now, according to Graham Smith, he just spoke to Farker and he said that Pat has a slight hamstring problem. There's those hamstrings again. I did say a couple of weeks ago that I thought from watching Paddy run, one, he doesn't look fit, but two, he looks stiff and tight and very kind of restricted. He's not really opening the legs, and you wonder, has this been here for a couple of weeks?
So I think somebody said it on your show or Joe's show. I don't remember. I can't remember. But someone said, it'd be good if he got a run in the under 21s for a while, just to actually get himself back up to some level of sharpness. He looks. I mean, to be honest, all of last season he looked terrible coming off the bench anyway, and I don't think he's that sort of a player. And if you listen to him on his own podcast thing with Joe Wilkinson, he said it himself that he prefers to start, and he backs himself when he starts. And the proof was in the pudding last year that when he came on or when he started, he got a good run of goals. But I think he's not effective from the bench whatsoever. And I love him to pieces. I think he's a great player, but an awful lot of stick. But it's just another thing of him getting injured again and not being on the bench. But look, some of the comments terrible.
Fell over his wallet, tripped up getting into the bus.
Pulled a muscle out. Oh God, I know. The poor fella gets awful about the stick, given how loyal he's probably been to
Yeah.
Leeds.
Yeah, he hasn't run away when he could have. He had offers he could have gone early in the career. Although I think a lot of people would wish they'd come in now. But I mean, when he has been in the team, and there are people who won't like him, and people do like him. But when you've looked at the stats last year, Bamford's run of the team did coincide with Leeds' best run of the season. So he clearly adds something. He does add stuff in the dressing room. How Joseph talks very positively about him as well. So they've had their disagreements, and he still talks very positively about him. But this comment down below here, Brian, is we've all wanted another number 9. Does this come at a good time considering the window, and maybe it's now 4 more players we need, not 3?
Yeah, well, again, the big thing is now is that if Joseph doesn't score or even contribute, is that it now? 4 games in a row. Obviously, he was excellent in preseason. Okay, be it against different types of opposition. I thought the chance that he had against Portsmouth, where the goal he scored against Valencia was very similar to the chance he had against Portsmouth, and he shifted it on his right past the defender, and then he looked like he just got caught under his foot, and I think the keeper saved it in the end or something. But that was something that in preseason he would have buried, and he should have buried in that game, but he didn't. But I do think, like, this for me, this is his last game, and if he doesn't really get that opportunity to give an assist or really look like he's contributing around the top 4, it probably is Pirro then you have to put in there and just see if that's what if he can actually prove that he's the number 9 that they signed, or buy another one.
Or if we can get another performance like Norwich out of him in the playoff, that was a hell of a performance from Pirro in the 9. And if you can just get him to do that, and then we saw in the final back to the way he has been, it's a strange one for me. We do have a team sheet to go through, Brian. One major change for it. I'll just take this up now. And that's Brendan Aronson in for Joel Pirro, who drops to the bench. So Meslier in goal. Fullbacks are Bogle and Firpo. 2 centre-backs of Stroke and Rodon. Sticking with the double pivot are the 2 central defensive midfielders in Gruev and Ampadu. Dan James and Nanto, possibly wide. Aronson the 10, and then Joseph. But it could be Nanto on the 10. We don't really know until the game kicks off. But what are your thoughts on the team sheet, Brian?
Look, I'm delighted that Pirro is out and Aronson is in. Whether as you said, it's Aronson on the right and Nanto in the centre, or it's vice versa. I do think there might be a bit of switching going around in that position, and they might drift around and change a little bit up there, which might be good as well. But it's definitely putting more energy and kind of putting more, chasing around the front a lot higher and a lot more energy that than Pirro gives you. So I mean, it's definitely better to have him in there. But look, I mean, Aronson's obviously had his critics. But I think this is a massive game for him. If he does something really impressive and really contributes in this game, I think the fans are instantly going to get off his back, because it's a derby. It's a massive game away from home. And if he really, asserts himself in this game, it's going to win over a lot of people. I mean, he just about did it against Portsmouth and then took it away 2 minutes later. So, look, I mean, you're going to get that with him. He's not a natural finisher. You can see that from any goal he scores. Is generally scuffed in, or it's generally a dodgy finish.
He's surprised more often than not when he scores. Like when he shoots, and then you can tell by the reaction of the celebration that he's like, oh, it's gone in. Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah. I mean, all the goals I've ever seen from him between the US, between RB, and obviously he's only scored, twice for us. I mean, they haven't been natural finishes. Like, really haven't been the best finishes. So he I know he's saying preseason he was working heavily on that, but I think he's in there for his energy and his dynamism and his getting this around and getting around the defense. And Sheffield Wednesday's defense are not exactly the fastest and the most mobile. So I think he's going to really try and push on top of them and kind of win some balls high up against the field and then try and create something for Nanto or for Joseph, which would be good,
Brian, where do you sit on the two central midfielders? I've said it an awful lot for the last couple of weeks. I'm a little bit concerned with how deep Ampadu is sitting. I know that he is starting moves and he likes to drop in there, but he tends to stay in there a little bit too much for me. And the two, where should be like that, kind of end up like this behind each other and really narrow. But I wanted to get your thoughts on how you think that midfield pairing is working, because I did expect more from Gruev going forward after preseason, but we haven't really seen it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you said you thought Rotwell should be in this game. I think it might be a little bit too early for that. He's only just like Farker thinking is probably obviously grinded out the draw against West Brom, which was painful to watch. But I think he just wanted to reestablish that solidity at the back and then look to move on forward. I think it would have been a step too far to bring Rotwell into this game. Whereas I think if he keeps that solidness at the back and then maybe allows the forward line to be a little bit more adventurous, it'll be, hopefully the joining up between the two will happen. But I mean, yeah, exactly as you can see. Ampadu, he was probably instructed heavily to sit on front of the defence. I mean, Strike looked excellent against West Brom, but he looked very poor in the other game. And Rodon has been a really shaky start to the season. Terrible against Middlesbrough, wasn't great against Portsmouth. Looked okay against West Brom, but certainly wasn't the better of the two. So I think Ampadu was there to just make sure that was really held the solidity of the back four and make sure that he protected them. Gruev just, I mean, he kind of looked lost a bit against West Brom, and it was massive disjointment between the midfield and the strikers, or not even the strikers, the front four. And that was what Reuter, is that going to become the person that, the Voldemort thing, the person that we don't say the name of anymore?
Not allowed to say him anymore, yeah. Everyone gets upset.
Exactly. But, Reuter, I mean, was the one that was able to take the ball and drive it forward, beat two men, create space, and move it forward. And Gruev is not going to do that. Hopefully, that's where I think Aronson can be massive in this, because to be fair to him, he is great at carrying the ball. His end product isn't amazing, and his crossing ability or finding space between the lines to pass isn't fantastic. But his driving between taking the ball, driving it forward, and being able to skip past two players, which in this league is a massive thing, because that just opens up reams of space. And, again, countless amount of people have said this in lots of shows where Reuter was brilliant at taking the ball, beating two players, loads of space, passing to Somerville, passing it to Nonso, passing it to James, and then, goals come from that. But I do like the starting lineup. I think is exactly what's needed. I'm glad he didn't go with Perot again. I'm glad that he obviously gave him his chance where he said for 10, and it didn't really work. But the bench is, I mean, nobody changes the game there. I mean, Rothwell, possibly,
maybe.
Chambers, I don't know enough about. Charlie Cruz, obviously defensive. Perot is, maybe you change him out for Joseph, and Gelhardt has done. I'm so disillusioned with Gelhardt. It's such a horrible thing. He was, you were clamoring
because you want him to be good, right? You want him to be a success here, don't you? Like he's a likable player. He showed an awful lot at the start, and you want him to do well, but it's just not happened.
Even when you watched him on the documentary on Amazon, he was the person you will like. I liked Charlie Cresswell, but it was a bit too much of a big show about him for me. I think he felt that he was too quick, and he thought he deserved his chance a lot quicker. And then that proved last season, where he was kind of told to rein it in a bit. But for me, like, what was the redhead guy's name? Sean McGurk. And Gelhardt were the two that I always thought really showed that kind of ability and showed themselves as being very personable and someone that you really wanted to kind of go forward and make a real stake. And even I think it was the Brentford game where he scored an absolute cracker. Now it was offside. The last game of the season, he scored a cracker of a goal and I thought, oh, this is what Gelhardt's going to be great at, and just never materialised. And even in Sunderland, 2 goals or something like that, 2 or 3 goals, and he just never. And he has to go. He probably won't go because we're so threadbare. But I do think he needs to just leave. Sadly, but
for his own sake, just go and play some football again and try and find that feeling again and get back into being an exciting young player, which he really, really was. And unfortunately, the system that we Leeds play, similar to Pirro, doesn't necessarily suit the player. He likes to play in a 2. It's not going to happen at Leeds. He's got to adapt to being a right-sided player, which he's not. I thought the first half against Bury he got involved a little bit. Say again?
This is a real Bielsa bench again, isn't it? Like
it's great. I mean, look at it and go through it, right? Cairns won't come on, Darlow won't come on, DeBayo won't come on, Crew won't come on, Mike might, but very unlikely he comes on. Chambers won't come on, Gelhardt probably won't come on. So you're left with Rothwell, Pirou, and Byram as the 3 changes tonight.
Yeah, I mean, Byron will only come on to either shore up everything at the back, or there's an injury, and Rothwell will come on for Gruev at some stage, and Perot might come on for Joseph. But you're not, look, unless they really know something different with Chambers. Now I know he scored against, I'm going to say Valencia, but couldn't possibly be wrong in that one. But I know he scored in pre-season, and he got around the place. But that's like all the players, like such a big gap between the under-21s and the first team. And
massive.
I don't, I mean, McKinstry was hailed as going to be the best up-and-coming winger we've ever seen, and he's just faded into oblivion. The same with Alfie McCallum. I mean, he's went to Motherwell, and then
they released him. Yeah, Queen's Park had a crack at him, and then they released him, and now he's a free agent. He's no club at all, which is just bonkers to think, really.
I know. Look, and that's unfortunate. And the Carroll is gone as well, and he was the one that they all thought was going to be a cracking centre half, and never materialised either. Anyway,
no,
you can go through and everything.
Well, that's it.
I know that. I know that myself.
Yeah. Not unfortunately, everyone's going to make it, which is a real shame because I was rooting for a lot. I have a soft spot for Sam Greenwood. I always had a soft spot for Sam Greenwood. I kind of got the impression looking at the documentary that Sam needs this to work. Like, he needs this. It's important that he makes it as a footballer, his upbringing and where he's come from and everything else. And I could kind of identify with an awful lot of what he was talking about. And I was like, I really want this kid to make it. And then I'm sure he will at a certain level, but I just don't think it won't be Leeds and it won't be Premier League level, at least for the short term anyway. But it's an interesting one. Brian, the other thing I wanted to ask you was, and this is the the never-ending question: Max Verber, injured or leaving?
I mean, I don't mind if he stays. I think this is his level. I think, watching him in the Euros, he was poor. I mean, I can't say I watched a huge amount of games for him last year, but from what I saw, he made mistakes. I think he'll get away with mistakes that he'll make in the Championship. But at the moment, like, it kind of boils back to that same thing as Creswell. Like, for me, you're playing Strike and Rodon, and then you're playing Ampadu, and after that, maybe he comes in. Look at Cooper last year. Like, Cooper's a perfectly good centre half at this level, and he just didn't get a look in. And I think he'll fall into that same category. And that's why I think Farke doesn't mind about not having another centre half, because he's thinking to himself, I get another midfielder, and then Ampadu slots in the same as last year. The only thing that I thought maybe at the start of the season was if they were going to play a back 3, he would be in there. But it doesn't look like that's on the radar whatsoever. I thought maybe tonight he might have, but like it doesn't seem like he's going to go that way. I think Robert's always the sort of person that until that window shuts and he comes out and makes an actual statement himself, you can't see him staying. But if he stays or if he goes is not. I wasn't excited when he came last year, 2 years ago, sorry, but I thought he had a 2-3 game period where he was decent, and then he just looked all over the shop. And I think we talked about it when we were at Leeds, that he looked like he could be a real rock for Leeds. And I think that, again, the stat came out that the first 4 games he played, we didn't concede a goal, and then obviously Crystal Palace happened and we conceded 5. And after that, it was like
wrong,
someone chopped his legs off. But he, it's this is the level. This, as I always think, is the Championship is like mid-level. If you watch German football or Italian football or Spanish football, anything out of the top 5, the Championship is pretty much the top end of the Championship is pretty much the same as the mid to bottom end of most European leagues. You get very hardened Championship players, hardened German players, hardened Italian players, and they all seem to kind of fit around the same kind of bubble. And I think he fits into that. I don't think he's mid to top end, obviously not mid to top end Premier League, even bottom end Premier League. I don't, he wouldn't break into a Fulham or even a Brighton, and that's, he's just one of those players.
Yeah, I think it's struggled in there, especially what Brighton are building at the moment. Another signing today as well. It's coming in there, putting a hell of a squad together. Which, from speaking to Kieran Maguire,
all this money from?
That's the question. So I did ask Kieran Maguire when we interviewed him for the PSR stuff, and I said to him, like, you're having a hell of a transfer window, and he said we have the youngest manager in the league. He's 8 years younger than James Milner, who's in his squad. He's younger than a couple of the players that are in the squad, and he goes, "This will either be amazing, or we'll get relegated." But there won't be anything in the middle. Is it either push for Europe or we'll go down? I think they're looking to try and make that push on to the next stage of trying to get into Europa Conference League, Europa League. But it's an interesting one. I did want to have a scary stat throw for people. Stats isn't here, by the way. I meant to say at the start, folks, he's a bit under the weather, but he's fine. He's okay. But Johnny Cooper, another infamous stats man, says Alex Kearns' first appearance in the Leeds United squad since May 2015 as an unused sub against Rotherham, when he was on the bench among Billy Sharp, A.D. White, Brian Montenegro, Calvin Phillips, Grady Ngoyi, and Casper Slot. So if you think things are bad now, that used to be our bench at one point in time. But hopefully this is the last week we see a bench like this, because we said it a lot last year. I didn't believe Daniel Farke trusted the bench. He only ever made 3 changes off it. A lot of those players, Cooper, Creswell, Klassen, were never coming onto the park. Gellhardt was another 4. We're in the same territory again this year.
That as well. Like when Alien was in the squad, he very rarely came on. We obviously didn't trust Alien whatsoever. Like, so, I mean, and I think everybody thought at the start of last season, Alien and Cody Drama would be the 1 and 2, and then when the Max Aarons thing came up, everyone was like, oh, so he really doesn't want one of these players, screaming out for a right back. Yeah.
Well, Byron's the only one who's got there now. It's cover at the moment, but it is, it's razor thin. I think I did say yesterday I could take Farke wanted 4 ones come in, 3 to go, great, 3 to go. But now looking at it going, we're back to this thing about the best ability is availability, and Pat Bamford's just not available. He's just not available often enough. Maybe Leeds new need to look at going and get a striker. What kind of striker they get, I don't know, because you don't want a young striker because you don't want him to get in Matteo Joseph's way. You're not going to get a 20 goal a season striker at this stage, at least not for decent money, unless there's some other plans there. But if we can get a swap deal with Gladbach and Verber and bring a striker from them over here, fine. You can have him. Take him. The other thing I wanted to go ask you real quick, Brian, was performance-wise against West Brom, we saw a very defensive-minded Leeds team, sitting back, not really pushing to go forward. Very much a reset and get to 0, get that clean sheet, and then start to build again. Farke very happy with it after the game. Most fans weren't happy with it after the game. But from a starting point, do you expect to see the same from Farke tonight being an away game against Wednesday, or do you think we'll see a little bit more attacking emphasis from
I think
Farke?
What he's going to try and do I think that's what Aronson is in the team for. I think he's going to do what he tried to do at Portsmouth and really go heavy gung-ho for the first 10-15 minutes. We saw against Sunderland that Sheffield Wednesday were very ropey at the start. And I think Sheffield Wednesday will do the opposite. I think Sheffield Wednesday will sit and hold and try and solidify for the first 15-20 minutes, get themselves into it slowly. And I think that's where, if we cannot get a goal or really hit the ground running at that early point in the first 15 minutes, it's going to probably end up like a very trudging, slow 70 minutes after that. But I'm hoping that they can kind of hit it very quickly and really get get a goal in the first, first 15. We were great at it last year. I think we had, again, not great at stats, but I think we were the top team for most goals in the first 15 minutes.
So when we scored first, we didn't lose.
Exactly. So I think, I really think if we can push and do that and kind of just get in the front foot, because we always look excellent when we get on the front foot and we really push for that first goal. It's when we get stuck between either scoring and then let the opposition come on, or stuck between loads of chances and no goals, and then it just starts to get disjointed, or we start to use the same patterns over and over and over and over again. You're getting a lot of congratulations for 50,000. I must say,
yeah, it's nice. Yeah, people are cool. You're all very nice. Telly's been doing a countdown for the last couple of weeks, so there we go, Telly. We finally got there. Well done. I judged the game more so by the length of highlights that we got against West Brom.
Would you say it was 40 seconds or something?
It was like 40 seconds of highlights. It was like one shot. Right, folks, that's it. See it. Bye. Like, is that it? That's all that happened? He will put pressure on himself with performances like that. Like, at least if we try and attack tonight in slightly more than West Brom, but doing the exact same thing that we did against West Brom, I think will upset a lot of people. And then if you're looking at Mateo Joseph, can you really judge him as a striker when he's not getting any service at all? And then he's just up there running around. The great press that we saw in pre-season, this really aggressive front press seems to have all but vanished since the season kicked off. You might see with Brendan coming in there now, you might see a bit more of that, a bit more energy in there. But I'd like to see Leeds be a little bit more aggressive, because although the bench isn't strong, that's still a very strong starting 11 that should be able to get points against Sheffield Wednesday.
100%. Like, I mean, we still, regardless, and I know people are really going bananas that we haven't signed, and obviously we just signed someone yesterday, so a little bit calm down. But regardless of that, and I know it's very difficult in a 46-game season, just everybody to stay fit. We have a 13 that are probably most of those players will get into every single. There's my reminder that there's a match on, as if I need to know that. But the first 13 players would get into any team in the league, and that does show that we are still one of the top and best teams in the league. It's just, we just have to capitalize on it. We have to get more players in. We have to just kind of replace. Everybody knew that people were going to go. Everybody knew that it was either going to be 2 out of 4, 3 out of 4, hopefully not 4 out of 4. But like, we all had the players in our head. Nobody thought Kamara would have went. Fair enough. That was a quick one to try and make a quick buck and balance out some PSR stuff. But I do think this team that we have on the pitch today, it's the best team we have. At the moment, because obviously nobody else is there. It should be able to do the business against an average championship team. And again, the manager said they'll look at the difference. They have 160 million pounds team, and we've 10 million or whatever it was. But we do on paper we should be. It's just, if you can utilize Aronson, do it right. The passing was poor against West Brom. Every time we seemed to break the lines, somebody made a stupid decision and just made the wrong pass per most of the time. Even Nonto was guilty of it. James and kind of got himself ahead of players and then got stuck. So you just want just a little bit more fluidity up there and a little bit quicker. And you always say the same thing, just quicker. It's just needed to be quicker.
Tempo. Get the tempo right. This team will cook.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Brian, before we wrap up, just real quick, I want to ask you, scores for tonight. What do you think the score is going to be, or what do you want it? What are you hoping for? Before you're massively disappointed in 90 minutes time.
As I said, I think if we can get an early goal, I think we go on to win 3-0, 3-1, possibly. If we can get an early goal, I think we'll do that classic away performance, the Millwalls of last year, kind of, But I'm just hoping it's not one of these, like somebody just said, 2-1. I hope it's not a 1-1 up onto the 89 minutes and then we scrape a goal in. I'd like to see a hell of a lot more control of the game. even if we went 2-0 up and we start doing what we usually do and just keeping on messing around, and we leak a goal at the back end of the game, and it still doesn't look like. I just hope like we don't have this thing of they have 3 shots and they score 2, or they have 1 shot and they score 1. It's just like we just need to
old ground.
Try and exactly. And I think that's why he did what he did last week, to just really batten down the hatches to make sure it was batten down the hatches to make sure it was 0-0. But I do think it'll be hopefully I think it'll be a 0. I'm going to go for 3-0.
I'm thinking a 0 too, though. I'm going for 1-0, but I'm going for 0 as well. I think they've hopefully will have sorted out the defensive. We could batter these, or we could get battered. They've had a mad start to the season. They've won a game 4-0 and lost the game 4-0.
I can't really judge a huge amount against.
It's too early still. There's not enough of a data set yet to judge it. But we're going to let everyone wrap up. We're going to wrap it up now and head off. Go enjoy the game, folks. Massive thanks, as always, for stopping by and hanging out for a few minutes. Big thanks to Brian for jumping on tonight and joining me for Countdown to Kickoff. We'll do this again, Brian.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure we'll be over at some point in the future as well. Hopefully, fingers crossed, this season. So, massive thanks, Brian. Cheers, folks. Enjoy the game. Fingers crossed for 3 points. Talk to you later.